Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our 3 p.m. land use hearing. Today is Monday, September 22nd, 2025. As is our tradition, we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, and please join if you're able. Well, welcome, everyone. My name is Kristen Stevens. I am currently the chair of the Board of County Commissioners, and I'm joined by my colleagues, Commissioner Jody Shedek McNally, also Chair Pro Tem, and Commissioner John Kafalis. From the clerk's office behind me, we have Lindsay Jones taking notes and recording the meeting. And across the way from our county attorney's office, we have Christine Luckison with us, and then a variety of folks from different departments. I'll turn it over to our planning manager for introductions and to share some hearing procedure instructions. So Jenny Axmaker, will you help us with that?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'm the planning manager here at Larimer County. Joining me at the dais, we have Senior County Planner Michael Whitley. We have our planning administrative support staff. We have Ryan Oswendell. Across the way, we have Senior Planner Samantha Mott, County Planner Justin Curry. From our engineering department, we have Connor Sheldon and David Pringle. And from our health department, we have Ashton Brodall and Leah Snyder. Joining us here at the dais momentarily will be Eric Freed, our county building official. And with that, we have respectfully requested that all members of the audience silence their electronic devices. Please help yourself to a copy of the agenda and hearing procedures. They're located right by the door in that wood holder. If you're joining us online via Zoom, you can also find those hearing procedures and agenda posted at larimer.gov/BOCC/commissioners-meetings. Please wait to speak until recognized by the chair. Please maintain civility, refraining from audience applause, comments, or disruptions, whether positive or negative. Please make all comments to the county commissioners from the podium. We do have a portable microphone available as needed. Please state your name at the beginning of your comments and provide the spelling of your name if it's unique. Please speak directly into the microphone so remote participants may hear. That microphone on the podium may be readjusted to best capture your testimony. If you have questions to ask during your testimony, they will not be answered until public comment is closed and the rebuttal has begun. Upon request, we do have assisted listening devices available for the hearing impaired. For those on Zoom, attendees will be muted until they're recognized by the chair. If an online attendee wishes to speak or request a consent item to be removed, please use the raise your hand function on the Zoom control bar or *9 on your phone. If the Board of County Commissioners has a legal question during the hearing, they may elect to go into an executive session with the county attorney. Executive sessions are private meetings where the board can get confidential legal advice. So rather than asking everyone in attendance to exit the hearing room, the board will relocate to a smaller room. A couple things I'd like to point out on today's agenda. We do have an item that will be tabled from today's agenda to a future agenda. So please note that it's the Zigray STR file number 23-Zone3510, and that is moving to October 27th. It's also my understanding that the Board of County Commissioners wishes to move an item from the discussion agenda to the consent agenda, and so that will require a motion in order to make that amendment to the agenda. And with that, thank you.
Thank you. All right. So I'll go through some additional information, including what's on our agenda today. As our planning manager said, we have the Zigray short-term rental at 1963 Phantom Ranch Road, file number 23, Zone 3510, that will be tabled to October 27th, 2025. We have two items currently on the consent agenda. The first is the Barather and Castellanos rezoning, file number 25, Zone 3744. This is to rezone an existing parcel from urban residential to planned development, and location is outside of Fort Collins. We have also on the consent agenda the Horizon Hills appeal, file number 25, GNRL 0574. This is an appeal to allow a decrease in the exterior property line setbacks from 20 feet to 10 feet for multiple building sites in a manufactured home community. So those are the two items currently on the consent agenda. On the public hearing discussion items, we have the Boxelder Townhomes Planned Land Division and Rezoning to Planned Development, file number 23, Land 4348. The request here is combined preliminary and final planned land division to consolidate two lots into one parcel and a rezoning from MR multi-unit residential, urban residential, and urban residential 3 to PD planned development. And that is outside of Fort Collins. And then there is the Zigray 684 Phantom Canyon Road short-term rental administrative special review and appeal, file number 23, zone 3509. This is an administrative special review for a 3-bedroom plus 1 sleeping area, 8-guest short-term rental in an existing home, and includes an appeal to section 335B2A of the land use code to allow more than one short-term rental on a parcel. And then the third item that will likely be moving to the consent agenda is our 2024 building code updates, file number 25, code 0286. So I'll first ask, is there, would either commissioner want to move anything from the consent agenda? No. Okay, is there anybody in the public who wanted to remove something from the consent agenda? You could also express if you wanted us to keep the building code updates on the public hearing agenda. All right, seeing no hands raised. First, we'll make a motion. I'll ask Commissioner Cavalas to make a motion to move the building codes update to the consent agenda, and then should we make a separate motion then to approve that consent agenda? Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. I move to move the 2024 building code updates, file number 25-code 0286, currently on as a discussion item to the consent agenda for today, September 22nd, 2025.
Thank you. There's a motion on the table. Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And I'll just remind folks, with the consent agenda, these are items that are considered routine in nature without controversy. And that's why we'll just, would be adopting them all at one time. That is also, though, why we ask both you, the public, and the commissioners if they want to remove anything, because we don't know if there's opposition to any of these items or people want a full hearing. So just to let folks know.
Madam Chair, can we just confirm
Yes.
there's no one online that wishes to pull a
Oh,
consent
yeah, let's
item?
do that,
Just real
please,
quick.
too.
If there are any
Thanks,
members of
Ryan.
the public online who would like to remove one of the 3 consent agenda items, please use the raise your hand function now. We have no hands raised.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jenny, for reminding me about that. So we will move on to a motion for the 3 items that are now on the consent agenda. I'll ask Commissioner Shattuck McNally to make that motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that the Board of County Commissioners approve the consent agenda subject to any conditions of approvals as set out in the staff reports and authorize the chair to sign the findings and resolutions for these items.
Thank you. There's a motion on the table. Any further discussion? Please go ahead, Commissioner.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. Just a quick comment regarding the rationale for moving the building codes update from a discussion item to consent agenda. Just so the public knows, we've had quite a bit of discussion on the details of the building code through various work sessions, public work sessions, as well as a joint work session with our Planning Commission. And we discussed it this afternoon at a public meeting, and it made sense to move this to the consent because there's no real opposition to what is being proposed in these building code updates. So I wanted to state that.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yeah, I think that's important to have stated that. Anything further? All right, seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes 3-0. So the consent agenda is approved. And if you were here for that item, you're welcome to stay, but you're also welcome to leave. So we will now move on to our first of our 2 public hearing discussion items, and this is a Boxelder Townhomes Plan Land Division Rezoning to Plan Development, and I believe Michael Whitley will be helping us with this item.
Yes, good afternoon. I'm Michael Whitley, Senior Planner with the Larimer County Community Development Department. This is the Boxelder Townhomes Plan Land Division and concurrent rezoning to plan development. The request is a combined preliminary and final plan land division to consolidate 2 parcels into 1 lot and to rezone the properties from MR multi-unit residential, UR2 urban residential, and UR3 urban residential to PD plan development. The property owner is Kevin Brown, and the applicant is Troy Jones of MTA Planning and Architecture. So the property owner owns 2 parcels totaling 11.36 acres north of Mulberry Street, which is also known as Highway 14, between Loma Linda Drive and Camino del Mundo. So to orient you with the vicinity map, this is Highway 14, also known as Mulberry again, Loma Linda Drive to the west, Camino del Mundo to the east. The larger parcel is 11.288 acres, and the smaller parcel is 0.07 acres, and both parcels are vacant. So the smaller parcel is just a little cutout on the north end of this property. So the property is in the Fort Collins Growth Management Area, and the property is immediately adjacent to Fort Collins city limits, as indicated on the shading on this map. Because the property is eligible for annexation, Larimer County can only accept land division and rezoning applications if Fort Collins staff determines that the annexation to the city of Fort Collins would not be required. Fort Collins staff did determine that annexation would not be required, and the Board of County Commissioners did accept that determination at a public hearing that was for the Brown annexation appeal, and that hearing was on May 22nd, 2023. So, to be eligible for development, a parcel has to be a legal lot. Legal meaning that it was created in a legal way. And the staff report includes a definition of what constitutes a legal lot. But in this case, the properties are not legal because they have changed configuration since May 5th of 1972, which is the effective date of a regulation that said to change parcel configurations, you need county approval if the parcels are under 35 acres. So because those were reconfigured without county approval, they are neither of the lots are legal and they are not eligible for development. This proposed plan land division would combine the parcels into one legal 11.358 acre parcel that would be eligible for development. So because this property is in the growth management area, the process used is a plan land division, and section 655D2D of the Land Use Code requires that whenever you approve a planned land division, the property has to be concurrently rezoned to planned development. Now, planned development is a site-specific development, so each planned development is unique for the property, and the goal is to approve land uses with development standards that would be consistent with the municipality standards and zoning, so that when and if the property is annexed, it would be consistent with what would be the result of development had it been developed under, in this case, Fort Collins's standards. So the applicant does desire, to go through zoning, sorry. So as you see, this property does have 3 different zoning districts that don't really follow property boundaries. I think at some point they did follow property boundaries prior to some reconfiguration. But this strip of land here is zoned MR, the multi-unit residential. The majority of the property is zoned UR2, and then this strip here is zoned UR3. Both UR2 and UR3 are referred to as urban residential. So the property owner does desire to develop approximately 2 acres of the property with 18 multifamily units within 3 different buildings. And if the planned land division and rezoning to planned development are approved, the specific development proposal would be subject to a site plan review to ensure compliance with all applicable development standards. So what you're looking at is kind of a concept plan. This application would not approve that specific development, but it would consolidate the parcels and then set up the zoning such that they could go through a subsequent approval called a site plan review, where staff would do a thorough analysis of compliance with development standards. So, but the applicant has put in quite a bit of work in terms of laying out the site to know that it would actually function should the property be successfully combined and then rezoned. As I mentioned, the multifamily development's on approximately 2 acres of the property on the southern end, and the remainder of the property would remain undeveloped. And that is largely because there is a waterway that runs through this property, and there's associated flood hazards, also wetlands and wetland buffers. And so the majority of the property would remain undeveloped in perpetuity unless some future process was gone through to approve future development on the remaining, kind of balance of the property. And I would like to note, so the reason we're going through this process now is because these lots are not legal. Had this property been one legal lot, the portion of the property proposed for the multifamily development is currently zoned multifamily or multi-unit residential. Multi-unit dwellings are allowed in the multi-unit residential zoning district through a site plan review process. And so setting up this zoning would actually just kind of set it up so that it could go through the process that it would have gone through anyway had the property been a legal lot. So what's being proposed is to allow multi-unit development through a site plan review process. Had this lot been legal with the current zoning, that would have been the process that we would have gone through. So water and sewer service would be obtained from the East Larimer County Water District and the Boxelder Sanitation District, and the property is within the Poudre Fire Authority's service area. With regards to public input, the applicant did hold a neighborhood meeting that I did attend on March 13th of 2024. There were approximately 6 citizens, or neighbors, sorry, property owners in the vicinity who attended the meeting. None of them really objected to the proposed development. There were some questions about, kind of the applicant's plans and such. Through most of this process, we received 2 emails, neither strongly objecting to the development, but then we did have an individual who showed up to the Planning Commission hearing, and I'll touch on that in a few minutes, who did elaborate on some concerns that he had. He did send a follow-up email after this staff report was written, and that has been provided to you. So, and I'll touch again on those concerns in a few minutes. So, there's a lot of detail in this particular staff report because there's a lot of criteria that we have to look at. So with this application, we have to look at the preliminary plat review criteria, which I have slides for, but I'm not going to go through in great detail. We can always circle back should commissioners have questions. So we've got quite a bit of preliminary plat review criteria. We've also got rezoning review criteria, and there's general review criteria. And again, I won't go into great detail here, but we'll be happy to answer any questions. I did want to touch on a couple of things that are deviations from our standards. So deviations from what would occur if strict compliance with the development standards were adhered to. So the applicant has requested a few deviations from the land use code standards. So a couple of them are, there is a requirement that there is a 100-foot setback from the center line of waterways. And there's also a 100-foot buffer for the edge of wetlands that are 1 acre or larger. So the proposed deviation would reduce these buffers to allow a water quality pond, which is located here on this plan, and portions of a duplex within that buffer. So the water quality pond would be about 42 feet from the wetland, and the residential building would be approximately 55 feet from the wetland. So to support this request, the applicant submitted what's called a credible and competent evidence report for wetland buffer reduction, and that's actually terminology used in the land use code, outlining several mitigation measures, including removal of noxious and invasive weed and tree species, the establishment of 3 coyote willow shrub stands on the southern riparian area to enhance vegetative diversity, and installation of a privacy fence between the development's northern edge and the southern perimeter of the Boxelder Creek to reduce light and noise impacts on adjacent natural habitats. That report can be found as attachment 6, starting on page 103 of the staff report. And to show context with this property, with the larger parcel, again, a little over 3 acres, with development concentrated on the southern end, the deviation would affect the area shaded in yellow. Everything else would be outside of the wetland buffer and the waterway setbacks. The second deviation is to the setback from Mulberry. So strict compliance with the setbacks would call for an 80-foot setback from the property line or 130 feet from the right-of-way center line. So that would result in quite a large setback. Now, the intent of the proposed setbacks, which are 15 feet from front property lines, 5 feet from side property lines, 8 feet from rear property lines, and a 24-foot setback from the property line adjacent to Mulberry, would be to allow development that is consistent with development to the east and west. So as you can see on this schematic, these are the proposed 8 plexes. This is a single-family home located immediately east of the property. And then this is a, I believe, duplex immediately to the west. So the intent is to allow that setback to be consistent with what is there. CDOT did have an opportunity to review the setback, and they do not object to the proposed setback. The real purpose of that setback is to provide a little bit of separation from, kind of buildings from major roads, but also to accommodate future development. And there's not anticipated to be an expansion of Mulberry in this area that these buildings would interfere with. Now, I mentioned Planning Commission. So this was on the Planning Commission's August 20th discussion agenda, and the Planning Commissioners did have quite a bit of discussion. They talked about questions about annexation and why the property was not annexed to the city of Fort Collins, the property owner's responsibility for maintaining on-site wetlands. They had some questions about the calculation of density of the development, access, and traffic impacts. They generally expressed support for the proposed development while recognizing that there was some concern from neighbors. There was one neighbor who did attend the Planning Commission hearing, and that neighbor had concerns that included traffic and access, the flood risk associated with the Boxelder Creek, the proposed building heights, the proposed density, and the concerns that this multifamily development would not be consistent with the single-family development to the east. One thing that I would note is that the PD zoning does include a 40-foot height restriction. That is actually consistent with almost all of the zoning districts in unincorporated Larimer County. So if you look at the base zoning allowances, including in UR2 and UR3, which are the zoning districts found immediately to the east, a 40-foot building height is standard with regards to maximums. So it's not actually that common for a building to get to that limit, but that is allowed by right in most zoning districts. So the Development Services Team findings can be found on page 84, and the Development Services Team does find that the Boxelder Townhomes Plan Land Division and Rezoning to Plan Development, File 23 Land 4348, complies with the preliminary plat review criteria found in Section 655D, the rezoning review criteria found in Section 661D, and the general review criteria found in 638D. And we do recommend approval. I do have a slide that does have that recommendation and a suggested motion. So that's a quick overview of the application. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Michael. Any questions for Michael? Go ahead, Commissioner Cavallis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Michael. I'm wondering, in particular, with regard to the referral agency comments, there were pretty extensive comments from the city of Fort Collins.
Yes.
Can you speak to that? I mean, will all of those be addressed, or the ones that must be addressed, or can you speak to that, sir?
So high level, this proposed development in terms of density and units and such is consistent with the Fort Collins structure plan, which is their kind of guiding document for future development. They do have a lot of very specific questions or kind of recommendations with regards to building orientation, lighting, setbacks, mitigation. Many of those will be addressed. We can't say that 100% there will be compliance with all of their standards. What we would do with the site plan review, should this property be successfully rezoned, would be to go through that site plan review process. We do hold the applicant to land use code development standards. So what's found in the Larimer County Land Use Code, we strongly suggest compliance with standards that are above and beyond the land use code standards, but we don't have the ability to say you shall comply with those additional standards that are above and beyond Larimer County standards.
Follow up?
Yep.
Thank you. Thanks, Michael. And
And actually, as Jenny Axmaker just noted, commissioners would have the ability to add conditions of approval to the PD to require compliance with Fort Collins comments should they choose to.
thank you. Just one follow-up question at the moment regarding the county land use code, and since this is in the growth management area, there has to be the communication with the city of Fort Collins. The height requirements, you're saying in unincorporated Larimer County, structures can go up 40 feet because based on some of the input that we received, it seems like it would really impact the view shed, looking west.
That is true. So, so the gentleman who has the particular concern with building height is immediately adjacent. He currently has a view of the mountains. That view shed would be impacted by any development, but yes, it would be impacted by a building of this height. We do not guarantee view sheds, though. We don't have view corridor, kind of standards, and any kind of development, like I said, would impact a view. I don't know off the top of my head what City of Fort Collins's height restrictions are. Jenny may, but I would be surprised if it was less than or shorter than Larimer County standards.
It is. Thank you. On that point, my last maybe follow-up here is regarding I thought that the updated City of Fort Collins land use code, which has gone through various iterations over the last few years, I thought they addressed the maximum height. Because there were concerns in the residential urban areas that it could impact, for example, one's access to solar if they wanted to put solar panels on their homes. Can either of you speak to that? I mean, wouldn't that have some implications for what is being considered here as far as height?
Potentially, and I don't know if it looks like Jenny's looking at the land use code right now. Like I said, I'm not sure what the City of Fort Collins' standard is with regards to height. But you had another point that I had something in mind for, but
Okay.
yeah, don't recall. Sorry.
Well, thank you, Michael. Thank you very much.
I don't know off the top of my head from Fort Collins because, as you said, they have updated the code recently. I do know that they do have contextual height setbacks as part of their code, and I do believe that you can have accessory solar that doesn't count towards the maximum height of the building, assuming it's less than, or assuming it's the normal height of a solar panel.
Thank you. Commissioner Shattuck McNally.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I guess I'll wait. Well, I guess I'll ask this of Michael. So can we, I thought it was interesting when they put on this, what we would do in trade and stuff, and I found that interesting. But I'm curious about the setbacks from Mulberry. Can you expand on that a little bit? Because I'm wondering about the noise level in the other homes, and so can you expand on the question about letting them get closer to Mulberry, but also can you expand on what you were explaining about the other homes next door were closer to the road, and also that you have checked that there is no plans to expand Mulberry in that area? Can you kind of go back and expand on that and clarify that again, please?
Yes, so CDOT did have the ability to comment on the reduced setback, and I did specifically call a representative from CDOT during the review, that was several months ago, to confirm that CDOT had no objections to a reduced setback to Mulberry. And that 24-foot setback is actually based on, I would clarify, this illustration that is in the construction drawings. There are actually different lines on different plans that would suggest, kind of different setbacks. It depends on where you're measuring it from, but I was measuring from this line, this line here, which is indicated on the construction drawings to the buildings. As you can see, that would result in townhomes pretty much lining up with the duplex to the west, and going back to this other, this other exhibit, it pretty much lines up with this single-family home to the east. So the idea is that this development would be consistent, would have a consistent setback to Mulberry as what is found in the area. So it would not be out of context with the area.
Okay, thank you. And the other next question I have, I'm not sure if this area east of I-25 with Mulberry is similar with drainage issues and flooding, similar to the west side. Was that taken, I see some drawings with some gutters or some spillways. Can you talk to, I mean, I know that's some of CDOT's issues, but also I'm wondering with this development, it could impact some of that drainage or something into those areas. Was that at all looked at with kind of, I know on the definitely on the west side on Mulberry and I-25, that's notoriously known for flooding constantly. So I'm wondering about the east side. Is there much history, or was that taken into indication for the west side?
So
I mean, the east side, I mean, the west side has notorious flooding. About the east side, looking at that, especially with that wetland there in the floodplain.
the flood hazard area that is, kind of known on this property is associated with Boxelder Creek, and this development would be outside of that flood hazard area. Again, also outside of the wetland, but not completely outside of a standard wetland buffer, and would be actually also not 100 feet from the waterway setback, but would be outside of the mapped flood hazard area. Now, we'll do, there's been quite a bit of technical analysis done already. There will be kind of final level of detail with the site plan review. I don't know if the engineer who reviewed this has any further insight on that. Connor is available.
Sure, I can speak to it a little bit. As Michael mentioned, we will have another site plan review to kind of lock in some of these final level of details, but we did have a drainage report as a part of this, so I can speak to it from that perspective. As Michael mentioned, the main flood hazard area is associated with Boxelder. We do have a representative, Aaron, from our flood team. If there's specific floodplain questions, I'll pass those over to him. But in regards to drainage specifically, this site's going to utilize a beat the peak method, so that's why the pond is a water quality pond and not a detention pond. So a traditional detention pond detains, releases that historic into the floodplain. When you're immediately adjacent to the flood hazard area, it's actually more beneficial to just treat the water quality and release it faster. So you beat the peak flows, in simple terms called beat the peak. So that's what kind of drainage method this site would be utilizing. Now, that's for the drainage going north to Boxelder. The drainage going towards CDOT right away, they do have some issues with. CDOT has provided comments. Not all of those have been entirely resolved, but that's kind of what the site plan process is for, is to make sure that we get all of the CDOT right away drainage concerns addressed. They have very specific hydraulics team comments that have been provided, so we'll sort those out with the site plan process. As far as everything going to Boxelder, though, I'm confident that it'll work, with the caveat that there's some technical details that I want to hash out at site plan phase.
Thank you. And that's exactly the reason for my question, was kind of that, some of those concerns. Thank you for clarifying that. I learned a new term today, beat the peak. Thank you for that. And then my next question, Michael, is with this, I think they talked about fence and lighting. Would this go towards our new standards for night sky and night downward lighting and all that, and protecting for wildlife, et cetera? That would be applying to this?
Correct. Our current lighting standards would be applicable to this and would be evaluated at that site plan review phase, should this application be approved.
Great. And especially when we get closer to that wetland, and since it's probably a major wildland migration path with that coming up, I'm sure that will be impacted. Okay, I think that's all I have for right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner, anything further? Okay. One thing I didn't review is how the process will go. So Obviously, we've had the staff presentation. We'll have 10 minutes for the applicant, so you'll be able to speak in just a minute for those 10 minutes. Then we will move into public comment. We'll see if there's public comment. Then you're welcome to come back up after public comment, if there is public comment, to make, to do any rebuttal of anything that you've heard. That'll be 5 minutes allocation. And then we'll move things back to the commissioners for final questions and deliberations. We can ask questions throughout the process, clarifying questions. So I will ask the applicant, and it's Troy, is that right? Troy, to come up and introduce yourself, and then, like I said, you'll have 10 minutes to talk about the project.
It's on. My name's Troy Jones. I'm the applicant, and the property owner, Kevin Brown, is the gentleman in the front row there. If you have any questions from his perspective, he's available as well. I think Michael did a great job explaining the ins and outs of the project. We're eager to submit our site plan to kind of go to the next level. So, as Michael explained, this is a consolidation of 2 lots just to create the legal lot, and then also we're creating the customized zone district in the PD zone as this, and then the next step obviously is that level of detail at the site plan review. We're grateful that the planning staff let us kind of show what we were thinking on the site plan review. So we got a lot of feedback from both county staff and, like you said, Commissioner Kafalis of City of Fort Collins, and all of those comments are what will be addressed at the site plan review. At this point, we're just looking forward to having the permission to submit that site plan review application, which will get us there once this approval is in place and we've got those final documents recorded. So I think that's really it. Did you have anything? Yeah, we just available for questions if you have any as we go through the rest of the hearing.
Great. Thank you, Troy.
Great.
And we'll ask if there's any questions for Troy right now, as long as he's still up here, and then we won't make you keep getting back up and down. Commissioner Kafalis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Troy and Kevin. Regarding the comments made by the City of Fort Collins, you seem very receptive to addressing those comments should this go to the site plan review step. What do you all think of adding that as a condition of approval, that those comments would need to be addressed?
I'd be a little bit cautious in that mostly if you read through their comments, there's a comment about a connecting walkway and a major walkway spine. If we were required to do a major walkway spine, which may or may not flush itself out in the review, that would really throw a big wrench in our ability to comply as we've anticipated, because just the width of the portion of the lot with the townhomes, that would, I just hate to be stuck to that, since, as Michael explained, right now the Larimer County Land Use Code is what applies, and the Fort Collins Land Use Code is more recommendations, unless you put that condition, which we would hope that you wouldn't.
May I follow up, please? Yeah, no, I think that's a honest and reasonable answer, so I appreciate that. I have another question, if I may. Perhaps you could speak to the intentions regarding this proposed plan development. In the material that we received, there was discussion about issues of affordability, or doing your utmost to try to achieve some level of affordability, and the mix between home ownership and perhaps rental units. Can you speak to that, and how intentional are you about that? I mean, in terms of your plans.
Yeah, I'll take a stab, and if I leave anything out, Kevin might want to come up and add to that. But there's always that missing middle that we keep hearing about of affordable housing, and so if you're 80% of AMI or less, then there's qualified affordable housing. But typically, as soon as you get over 80% up through like 100, 120%, there's not a lot of housing out there on the market that hits that that affordability range. So that's really kind of the range that we're shooting for is where there's it's not qualified affordable, but it's just at that point where there's such a low stock of that it'll hit that 80 to 120% AMI range most likely. As far as rental to ownership, it's I think at this point is sort of wait and see. We're just not sure what the market will bear. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner Shattuck McNally, any questions?
Not at this time, Madam Chair.
I have a couple questions, Troy. So, it sounds like the walkways don't feel like a doable kind of things. Can you talk a little bit about some of the other suggestions that the city of Fort Collins had? And there again, I do understand that sometimes some of these things result in the housing being less affordable than it was originally intended. But especially around the fencing for wildlife, is that something that you read about? Yeah.
Right.
I mean, how do you?
Those sort of things, right? The fencing and the wildlife, and I know you guys have a new planner that used to be with the city of Fort Collins for the natural or the environmental planning, and he's had a lot of really good suggestions. Scott, I believe his name is Scott, and he was the one kind of reviewing our credible evidence report, and it's been a really great dialogue with him. And we've been really open to his suggestions. And one of the things we worked through was some on our landscaping that we'll be doing, within that reduced buffer area. We would really be beefing up, at his suggestion, the varieties of the shrubbery and that are particularly conducive to the wildlife, and then whatever fencing that would screen the headlights and that sort of thing that he's recommending that we were fully on board with. So.
And Madam Chair, I will point out,
Yeah.
Mr. Britton is in attendance. Should you have any questions for him?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I guess, yeah. Would you want to expound on that at all? Because there's questions on turf that are in native grasses. Canopy trees. And then the wildlife fencing, I think, are the kind of big topics here. So maybe you could talk about that and how our kind of code reflects any of that as well. So
in those topics, that there's a lot of overlapping between our code and the city's code. I think it would, in both cases, it kind of falls into the qualitative standards versus the quantitative standards. So if quantitative standards can't be met, then you have this list of qualitative standards. And those are common between both codes. So that's improving habitat, removing noxious or invasive species, and these mitigation measures like the species selection that's good for good for wildlife, invertebrates and vertebrates, and also the headlights like Troy mentioned. It's a good proposal in the credible evidence report for having that much qualitative improvement for the level of impact quantitatively. So,
thank you. That's helpful. Commissioner Shattuck McNally.
I asked some questions since the developer, but I actually was waiting to have more questions to kind of ask you, Scott, because you know how this is kind of a important issue for me. I would make this absence of the applicant. It talked about from the CPW report, from last year. It talked about talking about really working with and collaborating with Colorado Parks and Wildlife, just kind of using some of their tools and kind of doing an update and kind of commenting and pros about given parcel. It just talked about using them and working with them especially since this is a high priority habitat, and I'm wondering what you think about that. And besides working with our wonderful environmental planner, Scott, also working with CPW because they recognize this as a high priority project.
Oh, definitely, and I think there's a lot of overlap. Like what we've worked out with Scott is really conducive to what Parks and Wildlife folks are wanting. Yeah, we're definitely open to and having that conversation with them as well. If there's anything in what we've worked out with Scott that's not addressed with them, I mean, other than if they were to say we need a 500-foot buffer, that would mean we don't have any development, and that's something we wouldn't want to entertain. But other than that kind of a comment, we're certainly willing to integrate qualitative enhancements, like Scott was saying, in our proposal.
Yeah, I don't see that in their comments, so I'm just asked it and suggested it was encouraged to talk and work with them earlier. I don't think I have any more questions for the applicant at this point, Madam Chair, but I did have some more questions at Scott, so I don't know how you wanted to handle that, because I don't. If anybody have more questions for applicant,
Do you have any more questions for Troy? Okay, we'll let Commissioner do that, and then Commissioner Shattuck McNally will let you ask Mr. Benton some questions.
Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, Troy. Just to go back to the height thing for a little bit. I mean, I read in the material that you're looking at 18 units, townhomes, that would be in 3 buildings.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess with that configuration, the height, which I believe is 40 feet, is what is needed to get all of those
Right.
townhomes in there.
Yeah, so the model type that we're looking would be, it would have a drive aisle kind of down the middle that would have a kind of a lower level, and then on the sides facing the outside property line, the grade would sort of be built up in front of the unit, so it would look like a 2-story building from the side property lines, and it would look more like a 3-story building if you're driving right down the drive aisle. And the grading that we would do, but depending on where you measure from, it would be like a 40-foot or pushing 40 feet from the drive aisle. If that makes any sense. From the property line, we will be doing some grading from the property line up to the front porches of these units, and so from the property line and from the drive aisle, it'll be comparable to 40 feet. But we'll definitely comply with, not exceeding that maximum in the zoning.
And the drive line there is right there in the middle. There is what.
Right, yeah, right down the middle would be the access drive, and there's like similar townhomes that my firm has developed in Fort Collins that has kind of the same model, where along the drive aisle side, it's slightly recessed, and all the garage doors come off of that in the Rigdon Farm development.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you.
So it'd be similar to that.
Yeah. I think we're good, Troy, for now, and then we'll call you back up
Okay.
if we have any further questions. Commissioner, should we open a public comment, or you want to?
I can wait till after public comment,
Okay.
Madam Chair.
All right, there might not be any, so we'll see. Is there anyone here for public comment? There is. Okay. Well, welcome. We'll give you 3 minutes to speak. We'll have you introduce yourself.
Sure. Trying to get my head to stop hurting after all of that. I'm the property owner that Mr. Whitley was referring to that submitted emails. My name is Steve McGill, Magill. And, I'm the property owner, obviously, just adjacent to the east of the developed property, the proposed property. My wife and I have lived there for 43 years. A lot of the questions and things that you have addressed, we have a significant amount of firsthand experience with some of those issues. The wildlife, it's pretty well gone. They clear cut the lot last summer. The bald eagles, the vultures, the coyotes, we've had pumas, just about anything native to the state of Colorado, including elk, but I don't think we have ever seen any bighorn sheep. So being a ram fan, that didn't work. But anyway, it'd be great to see the wildlife come back if they can do something with that. I think probably within my email, and you three did receive that, it sounds like. It's been reviewed, and I can't thank you enough for that. But the zoning is probably, I think, the biggest question I've got. It's an interesting thing that they're doing, combining two pieces to create an opportunity to rezone the entire piece. I've been following the zoning on this piece of property since about a year after we moved in, because we've really enjoyed our view. My first fear was that there would be a 7-Eleven or some other sort of a convenience entity constructed there. State of Colorado, Larimer County, on several occasions have told me I didn't have to ever worry anything about that because of the drainage issues, the egress for vehicle issues. I can't remember who it was. I think it was somebody who might have been in Mr. Whitley's position, back in the 1900s, who, when I asked if he might suggest if I would buy the property, he said, if you want to investigate with the Fisher Land Company, which I think is who owned it back then, he said, but, personally, if it was me, I wouldn't bother. I can't imagine what would ever happen that would somehow allow construction of really much of anything on that piece of property. His majority reasoning for that, again, was the drainage. I can't remember if that conversation occurred prior to or after the Spring Creek flood, but I think some of the idea of paving over wetlands, drainage areas, and that is something that would have come into consideration. I took public speaking at CSU, and I don't think it stuck with me real well, so my apologies if I get a little haphazard on this. But one of the other things that I would like to hit on, my wife brought this up.
I'm sorry, Mr. McGill, your time is up. So can you just have one, maybe sentence or two to close your thoughts out? We do have your written materials as well.
Privacy is the thing that's not on there. For my neighbors on Loma Linda, for my neighbors in Vista Bonita, the idea of having a 3-story building 20 feet off of my back fence line with windows that will allow people to look into my dining room, my kitchen, my bedroom, that's not a real appealing future. Thank you for your time. 43 years and 3 minutes.
That's pretty good.
I'm available.
I think you did okay with the speaking. I think your speech teacher would be proud.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience that wants to give public comment? Ryan, can we ask if there's anyone online?
If there are any members of the public online who would like to speak on this item, please use the raise your hand function now or *9. No hands are raised.
All right, we'll close public comment, and Mr. Jones will give you the opportunity to rebut if you want to, or the owner, either way. You'd have 5 minutes, so.
No, I just want to thank Steve. We actually got together and had a conversation to just brainstorm.
All right, can you just introduce yourself for the record, please? Thank
Kevin
you.
Brown. I am the owner of the property and the developer. And so, I just wanted to thank Steve and anyone else who's listening that's given me public comment. I've had interactions with a lot of the adjacent renters and folks from Cloverleaf community. Actually, they've been the most vocal about this, actually. So I've had great feedback and dialogue, and I just wanted to say I appreciate everyone's feedback and to continue to reach out to me regarding this, because I'm pretty open. My goal is to build something that is something we can be proud of, right? And just to speak to the affordability, that's really important to me. It's important that these be affordable units, and my target price is I want these to be less than $400,000, right? And if I can't do that, I don't want to do this at all, to be honest. And so it's a little bit of a tug of war in terms of accommodating all the things that are asked of us, the wetland mitigation, all these things, and even the plan that was just proposed and the HECRAS study and everything that we've done here it's increasing the prices of the units, and it's very difficult to be pulled in these different directions. But that really is our intention, and we've got to kind of learn as we go in terms of what we can and can't do reasonably so. But that is my goal, and I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who's contacted us.
Thank you very much. All right. I'll bring it back to the commissioners. Any further questions before we begin deliberation? Commissioner Shattuck McNally.
Yeah, I wanted to talk with Scott a little bit. I know you've looked at that, and I appreciate you working with the applicant to look at this credible, report. And I'm curious about, and especially after the Mr. McGill's comments that they've already clear cut it, and a lot of the wildlife have maybe left now because of that disruption. Do we? Well, first off, I think construction will probably be disruptive, and I'm curious with the wetlands and CPW. Do you think it's first question is it important for them to also be partnering with CPW, especially if there was a bald eagle there and other things, and find out what kind of wildlife were there and how to work with maybe encouraging wildlife to come back? Would you encourage them to work with CPW, or do you think just kind of what you all have crafted is enough to meet all of those standards in those conversations? I hope that question was clear.
Yes, Commissioner, I think that there's always value in coordinating with CPW. I think we have a lot of our bases covered from an ecological standpoint, so they might have something to provide, CPW, and I think it'd be wise to do that. To our knowledge, there was an ecological characterization study completed for this that fed into the credible evidence report, which is essentially a baseline study, and there's also a desktop aspect to that. So, to our knowledge, there's not a bald eagle nest nearby, but that doesn't mean that they don't use that area for foraging or perching or whatever the case may be. But there is no nest nearby, as far as we know.
Okay, thanks. And would that kind of study or that kind of report, any data or something be important for looking at or getting a baseline before anything happens to kind of understand the impacts?
Yes, so the ECS does provide a baseline, but it's common practice to have something like a bird survey done before you do any tree clearing or habitat clearing. And that's whether those are exotic species or not. So if there's, grubbing or tree removal, getting a clearance survey is pretty standard practice and something that we have in our conditions of approval for most projects.
So that would be a part of this project?
Yes.
Okay.
At the, I don't know if you will call it technical review, but
Site plan review.
Site plan review.
Okay. Thank you. And can we talk a little bit about the Beat the Peak, or between you and Scott, about the Beat the Peak pond feature? I think about some of Fort Collins. City of Fort Collins had a really great program that I had saw a video on and actually went and looked at some of their projects where runoff from parking lots or from construction was met with some native plants or some capturing before it kind of flowed in towards a major waterway. And then also think about High Plains Environmental Center and what they've done to that major lake, but the runoff from the parking lot and the ecological or plants and things they've done to kind of filter that before it gets into that major lake. And now they have some of the most biodiverse areas in this urban area of Larimer County, and they have so many bee species. So I know some of that can be done with the right mitigation or construction things in mind. And I don't know, does this Beat the Peak feature address that?
There's certainly different ways to do it. The way that this development is proposing to handle it is with a water quality pond. So instead of a traditional detention pond, they would have still a pond that would be essentially there with the sole purpose of treating the water quality. So it would have some sort of water quality feature. Sometimes they're ecological, sometimes they're more standard outlet structures. But it would have some sort of water quality capture volume treatment measure that would then release the treated water into Boxelder. So at this time, it's a little bit more traditional in the way that we're approaching that, but it's not to say that we couldn't also use other additional ecological measures before releasing it into Boxelder.
Can you expand on what that looks like to expand to release or release it into Boxelder? What that, when you talk about traditional ways, is that just a straight flow into the Boxelder? And
yeah, the treated water from the water quality pond would release straight into Boxelder, opposed to like releasing it earlier and then having like grassy swales or other grass buffers treatments in between. But the water quality pond in this case is doing the full treatment, so there wasn't a need for additional measures before it got to Boxelder. Sometimes we'll see people use additional length of grassy swales or additional buffer zones that are also included in their treatment of the water quality. In this case, the goal is to get it into Boxelder as fast as possible. So treating it with a water quality pond, getting it into Boxelder before the peak flows are coming down is the approach for stormwater quality here.
And that is to help with the drainage concerns or the flooding concerns?
Yes.
Okay. So that's why that method was chosen, was because of the flooding concerns?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. So Scott, if you wouldn't mind if I can expand on that, because this is a wetland, what are your thoughts on that traditional method for the water quality, or for what's, impacting, even though it's just a sliver of the wetland, it could have some major runoff from the gravel or car, someone, spills gas or paint or all number of toxins that could get into that area.
Boxelder Creek is currently a 303D listed stream for certain elements, selenium, E. coli, and one other that I don't recall. So I don't think this pond would treat E. coli, but it does treat most of the others. Not E. coli. Some of the salts and things that are common, right? But things like E. coli and heavy metals, stuff like that from breaks, that kind of thing, that would get treated, I think, in this water quality pond. And then you have an additional distance that's heavily grassed before it gets to Boxelder Creek. It doesn't go straight into the ordinary high water mark of Boxelder Creek. So I think this is a positive. It's a good way to treat it. And native species would be used in the water quality pond, which is a plus. Overall, this is, in my opinion, a solid plan.
And then, do you have any thoughts about, like Fort Collins had talked about tree canopies and things, even if it is used as a raptor for, you said foraging area, maybe for, there might be some, food there, of course. I can think of all kinds of things that would be a food source. Any kind of plantings or planning to encourage wildlife to come back? Like I think about my neck of the woods, we keep the choke cherries and apple trees along the waterways to keep the bears and other things away from the houses and near the wildlife corridor. So I'm thinking what kind of plantings, if we're looking at what City of Fort Collins was talking about, tree canopies and things like that, and the plantings of the certain species along the fence line, what would that be something to think about or recommend?
Yes, and that's specifically mentioned in the evidence report, and can be further fleshed out in the site plan review process. But they mentioned coyote willow, which is a native species, and we'll be looking to get rid of the non-native species and put some of these specific ones back in. That could be the coyote willow or several kinds of currants. That would be the objective. It's kind of a small-scale restoration project.
Yeah, I had read that in this evidence report. And then with the fencing, it talked about the City of Fort Collins. Is our requirements also, I was trying to compare the two about keeping it up so that smaller wildlife can go under the fence, and would that be part of our recommendation?
It can be, yeah.
Okay, so that's something we could recommend. And I see Mr. Sheldon would like to add.
We'll also have specific floodplain requirements as it relates to fencing. as I mentioned, Aaron Worcester with our floodplain department is reviewing this from the floodplain perspective. Everything I've said is stormwater perspective. He did also want me to mention that earlier it might have been said that currently nothing is in the flood fringe. There is currently one townhome in the flood fringe. They're having to go through our floodplain development permitting process for that. They have gone through one round of reviews already, so they have to model the rise in the 100-year water surface elevation, and the townhome in the fringe has to have the living areas elevated to comply with the floodplain development permit. Those are things that just Aaron, I think, wanted me to amend. I think he caught that it was mentioned that nothing was in the flood fringe, but there is some of that still that needs to be worked through at the site plan process. It's already, the ball's rolling, but there's still some things to come to work through there.
Well, thank you for mentioning that, Madam Chair. If I don't just want to expand on that, that was actually going to be my first question, but I kind of got fixated on the wetland thing, which of course you know I would. I was concerned about that townhome being a significant portion in the floodplain. I thought the rules were for some of our flood rule insurance that if any buildings were constructed in that certain areas, and maybe that's too technical for here, that it kind of put us in jeopardy for all homes with the would that be something that they would look at to make sure that didn't endanger some of those regulations or rules about things being built in the floodplain or flood view? I'm not sure which one it was, but I know that was something we had earlier, a discussion on, not in this land use hearing, but another one about certain things getting built in those areas could impact some of those federal regulations as well.
I think as long as they model it, and they model the 100-year water surface elevation, and the townhome in the fringe has the living areas elevated, they should be all right. But I might toss it to Aaron here to see if he could chime in.
As best we can tell, Aaron is not online.
Okay. Maybe he's just on the listening, but he did chat me and say that they would comply with the National Flood Insurance Program if they met all of our floodplain development requirements.
Okay, that's the answer to that's what the answer I was looking for. Okay, that's helpful. And that was going to be one of my first questions. Okay, so Scott, just wanted to again just go back to you. You feel this is it sounds like you worked on a pretty good plan to kind of address the importance of this. I completely agree with the Carl Parks and Wildlife. This is a high priority wildland or habitat. So I'm curious that you're feeling pretty confident about meeting those that requirements, and if we should we put it as a conditional approval, or should we really focus on them working also with CPW, or do you feel this is enough overlap with what CPW would want?
I think that we likely have enough overlap, but two heads are better than one. So if we want CPW, then
okay,
include them. Yeah,
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other questions of staff, Commissioner?
No, thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for letting me ask all those questions. I appreciate it.
Commissioner Cavallis, any questions?
I don't think I have any questions at this time.
All right, so we can move into deliberation then, and Commissioner Cavallis, I'll have you get started.
Thank you. So, let's see. Well, first of all, thank you to the applicants for being present, as well as the owner, of course, owner of the property. Thank you to Steve, neighbor there with concerns. So I appreciate everyone's participation. It is my opinion that, the three sets of review criteria that pertain to preliminary plat review, rezoning, and, the general review criteria, I think all of those criteria have been met. I think the discussion with our environmental planner about addressing the wetlands and the Boxelder Creek, the wildlife issues, I think there are in the conditions of approval and in some of the further discussion, I think those are being addressed. And so based on that, I can support this application that would essentially legalize the two lots, put them as one, and also allow for the rezoning. And then I think there would be more scrutiny during the site plan review process. So that is all to say that I will be supporting this application.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Shannon McNally.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So again, I appreciate the applicant being here and the owner and the representative also, Mr. Miguel. I appreciate you being here in person and looking and bringing those, sending in your comments. Those were helpful. So I look at kind of those rezoning criteria and review, and the one that I had some questions and concerns on was the proposed change does not result in significant adverse impacts on the and national environment, and that was one that I had. That's why I had a lot of questions today, and so I didn't get to ask Madam Chair, but if you don't mind, I just wanted to see if the applicants would commit to really working and having questions with CPW and working and bringing them into that conversation. Then I won't need to require it as a condition of approval, but I really would strongly encourage that collaboration and partnerships just to make sure we're addressing all of that. And then, so that that criteria was a concern of mine, but I feel like that has been, if they're willing to work, I agree with Scott. Two heads are better than one, so I appreciate you considering that. The other criteria with the that I've looked through all the other code provisions, the development standards, all those. I feel that those have been addressed with the application. Certainly there is a demonstrated community need and results in a public benefit for this kind of housing. But also I appreciate the preservation of the lands that are really the wetlands. That's really important. Of course, they couldn't do that anyway because of floodplain. So addressing those concerns, I think that my questions have been addressed, and so I can support this application.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yeah, I'll also be supporting this application. Appreciate you answering all the questions. Taking a real challenging piece of property and finding a little space where we can build out. I think that that is a community benefit. Also trying to provide a style and type of housing that might be more affordable for middle-income folks in our community. Also something that we're really concerned about. And then really, there again, with this challenging property, like infill projects like this are challenging, especially when you're having to navigate around some of the water conditions, water concerns here, and floodplain concerns. So I am supportive. I do think this is a benefit to our community. I appreciate you taking this challenging property and looking at it. I also do really appreciate the credible and competent evidence report, because I think that one of the statements that's made in the report is that were you to have that 100-foot buffer, you wouldn't have to do anything, right? You would just have to have that buffer, and that would be your only obligation here. And in looking for ways to mitigate, because you're not able to have that buffer, you're really improving upon this important natural area by removing noxious weeds and making sure there's the correct vegetation there, removing trash and other kinds of things. That this will be an improvement in this area, and so I think that mitigation is well thought out, and I appreciate the work that you did to make sure that you're leaving things better than you found them, not just the same. which I think is a really important piece of this project. So I will be supporting it, and I will ask Commissioner Kofalis to make the motion.
Madam Chair, may I ask, I see up on the thing that, or it's there, okay, I see the amended. I just wanted to make sure that the condition 7 was going to be addressed. That's all.
Sure,
Thank you.
of course. All right, Commissioner.
Thank you. I move that the Board of County Commissioners approve the Boxelder Townhomes planned land division and rezoning to planned development, file number 23-land 4348, subject to the conditions found on pages 84 through 86 of the agenda packet, with the following revision. Condition 7 shall be amended to include, quote, wetland, buffer, and waterway setbacks shall be consistent with those described in the credible and competent evidence report for wetland buffer reduction.
Thank you, Commissioner. There's a motion on the table. Any further discussion on this item? Please go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you. Just very quickly, I think it was Mr. Brown that mentioned about talking with the neighbors, and I guess I just want to put out there that I still have concerns about the height issue, and I know you probably can't do much about that, but working with the neighbors, especially the ones due east of the proposed development, hopefully there can be some discussion about, whatever kinds of mitigation can occur, because if there's any accuracy in the photographs that we received, it seems like it's quite a it does affect the view to the west. So I just want to put that out there.
Sure, thank you. Anything further? All right, all in favor of the motion on the table, say aye.
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 That motion passes 3-0. Thank you all. We'll move on to our next agenda item, and that is the Zigray 684 Phantom Ranch Road short-term rental administrative special review and appeal. And this will also be Michael Whitley presenting. And then, yes, go ahead, Commissioner.
I just want to state for the record that I have had, multi-year relationship association with at least one member of the Zigray family. I want to acknowledge that. We've not talked substantively about this particular proposal regarding the short-term rental, but I think it's important to state that relationship with as a county commissioner working in the Red Feather Lakes area, that is the case. But all of that said, I do believe I can make an impartial decision.
Thank you, Commissioner, for stating that. Appreciate that.
Okay.
And just so the folks know, this hearing will go the same as the last one. So we'll have the staff proposal or staff presentation, 10 minutes for the applicant. We'll take public comment, and we'll have 5 minutes of rebuttal, and then we'll move to deliberation. So I'll let you get started, Michael.
Yes, good afternoon. Again, I'm Michael Whitley, Senior Planner with the Larimer County Planning Division. And this is the Zigray 684 Phantom Ranch Road Short-Term Rental Administrative Special Review and Appeal. The request is Administrative Special Review approval for a 3-bedroom plus 1 additional sleeping area, 8-guest short-term rental in an existing home. The request includes an appeal to Section 335B2A of the Land Use Code to allow more than 1 short-term rental on this parcel. The applicant is Mark Zigray, and the property owners are Mark and Susie Zigray. So the home at 684 Phantom Ranch Road, Red Feather Lakes, is located on the west side of Phantom Ranch Road, approximately 3,200 feet. That's about 0.6 miles, southwest of the intersection of Phantom Ranch Road and County Road 74E, also known as Red Feather Lakes Road. So to orient you, the subject property is located here. Phantom Ranch Road connects to Red Feather Lakes Road. So I've got a little bit of a delay on my cursor here, but it connects up to Phantom Ranch Road and crosses several parcels or a handful of parcels that are owned by the U.S. Forest Service. So the subject property currently contains 2 existing homes, both constructed in 1967. The property is zoned O open, and it is within the boundary of the Red Feather Lakes planning area, and the subject parcel is 80 acres. So administrative special review approval was granted by the Community Development Director for a short-term rental for 1 home on the property on November 7th, 2024. That application approved a maximum of 10 guests within a 4-bedroom home plus an additional sleeping area, and the address of that home is 849 Phantom Ranch Road, again, Red Feather Lakes. So the subject home is located approximately here, and the short-term rental that was approved is located here. As I measured it this afternoon, it's approximately 630 feet as the crow flies. I think the applicant maybe has a different measurement, but it's approximately 630 feet from the approved short-term rental. So this administrative special review application is for a 3-bedroom home that proposes to utilize an additional sleeping area for a total of 8 guests. And again, this request includes an appeal to section 335B2A, which specifies that only 1 short-term rental should be allowed on 1 parcel. When this land use application was initially received, county staff mailed a courtesy notice to surrounding property owners within 500 feet of the subject property. And then when the hearing for the Board of County Commissioners was scheduled, a courtesy notice was mailed to property owners within 1,000 feet of the property. That difference is because of a change in policy with regards to public notification. However, because of the size of the properties and the adjacent ownership, there are only 2 parties that were actually notified of this application. So this property is surrounded on 3 sides by Forest Service land. That's shown in the green on this vicinity map. And the other parcels that are not owned by the Forest Service land are owned by the Zigrays. So besides the Forest Service, there was not a third party that was actually notified because there's not an immediate neighbor and private ownership in the vicinity of this application. So the U.S. Forest Service was sent a referral, not only because they're an adjacent property owner, but they provide the access. So Phantom Ranch Road, as I mentioned, is a private road which crosses Forest Service property to access Red Feather Lakes Road. Comments from the Forest Service note that Phantom Ranch Road is open to motorized use by the general public and that the Zigrays do not have authority to plow, maintain, or otherwise improve the road. So with an administrative special review, there are criteria. So first is that the proposed use would have a minimal impact on existing and future development in the area. Next, any impact associated with the environment, wildlife, access, traffic, emergency services, utilities, parking, refuse areas, etc., have been adequately addressed and or mitigated. In this case, there is a little bit of concern with access with regards to the inability of the property owners to actually maintain or improve the Forest Service road that is the only access to this parcel, and we don't know what the Forest Service's kind of maintenance schedule is with regards to plowing, for example, in the winter. That is outside of the ability to control of the property owner. Next, the recommendations of referral agencies have been considered and are adequately addressed. Fourth criteria is not actually applicable because this property is not in a growth management area. But actually, it is applicable, sorry, because it's consistent with the regulations of the comprehensive plan. And this is, as I mentioned, in the Red Feather Lakes planning area. We do find that the proposal is not inconsistent with the Red Feather Lakes planning area. It doesn't actually provide a lot of guidance with regards to land use. And lastly, the project, the applicant has demonstrated that this project can comply with the applicable criteria listed in Article 3, which is use regulations. So in this case, the use regulations, and I apologize for the small font, it's not really intended to necessarily be completely legible, but there are use regulations with regard to short-term rentals, and this application does not comply with item A, which is only 1 short-term rental shall be allowed on a property. That I would note that standard does not consider lot sizes, so it doesn't say that there could be more than one if the property is above a certain size. It just says there shall be one per property. The application could comply with all of the other standards should the application be approved. There are also appeal criteria. So because the application does not comply with the one short-term rental per parcel or per property, there has to be an appeal. So with regards to the appeal criteria, there are 5. First, the approval of the appeal will not subvert the purpose of the standard or requirement. Approval of the appeal would not be detrimental to public health, safety, or property values in the neighborhood. Approval of the appeal is the minimum action necessary. Approval of the appeal will not result in increased cost to the general public, and approval of the appeal is consistent with the intended purpose of the code. So the purpose of the standard and the intent and purpose of the land use code is to allow one short-term rental per property. There has been an approval for a short-term rental on this property that allows up to 10 guests. And so from staff's perspective, staff does not believe that approval of the appeal, or we believe that approval of appeal would subvert the purpose of the standard or requirement. It would not be consistent with the intent and purpose of the land use code. Our findings are that the Development Services team finds that the Zigray 684 Phantom Ranch Road short-term rental administrative special review and appeal, file 23 zone 3509, does not fully comply with section 335B, therefore doesn't comply with the criteria that addresses the need for compliance with section 3 standards, and does not comply with the appeal review criteria found in section 672B5 of the land use code. We are therefore recommending denial of the request.
Thank you, Mr. Whitley. Any questions for Mr. Whitley? Go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Michael, could you expand again on the U.S. Forest Service's concerns and the road? I've traveled on a lot of Forest Service roads throughout northern Colorado, and I know what conditions can look like. And so can you expand on that a little bit, please, of that? That's the one I wanted to talk about.
Yeah, so, and actually, when I was preparing for this presentation, I did not find the direct comments on this application from the Forest Service, but I did actually call the Forest Service as a part of this review. And they did reiterate that Phantom Ranch Road, as it crosses Forest Service land, is open to the general public and it can be accessed by motor vehicle. However, the Zigrays do not have the authority to plow, maintain, or otherwise improve the road. And so the concern that could be raised with that, and again, this is kind of at the discretion of the board, is with regard to the ability to control conditions of that road, which is about, again, 0.6 miles from Red Feather Lakes Road to this property. And if it's not plowed in the winter, then the applicant actually doesn't have the ability to go out and plow it themselves. We do know that that road does not meet current road standards. Now, that's not a criteria for this particular application because it was received prior to the change of the land use code that requires compliance with that. But the applicant does not have the ability to improve the road should the road deteriorate to the point that it does not provide adequate access.
Thank you, Michael. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Cavallis.
Thank you. Thank you, colleagues. So with regard to the criterion in section 3.3.5 B2A, the only one short-term rental shall be allowed on a property. Can you, Michael, would you expand on that? I mean, we're all part of that process when we updated our short-term rental regulations. You know, what was the intent of stating that? And also you made reference earlier that it didn't really take into consideration the lot sizes and all of that.
Yes, correct. So I'll take that second part first. So, had the commissioners decided that, kind of, that they wanted to allow more than one short-term rental per property, they would have had the ability to build in some sort of allowance based on property size, but that was not the case. The commissioners did not, kind of consider when adopting these regulations to the possibility of allowing more than one short-term rental on a parcel. For very large parcels. Again, this property is 80 acres. But there is a different land use called a resort lodge or resort cottages that does allow more than one short-term rental per property. However, that use, resort cottages, is not allowed in the open zoning district. We did discuss with the property owner a few years ago the option of rezoning this property to forestry and then going through I believe it would be a special review process to allow more than one short-term rental on this property. It would be considered to be a resort lodge at that point, or resort cottages. That would require an on-site either employee or manager, but that would have been an option, and the property owners chose not to pursue that path. They chose instead to seek approval for 2 independent short-term rentals, which is not allowed by the code.
All right, are we ready for the applicants? We'll have the applicant come up, and you'll have 10 minutes to state your case. Have you introduce yourself? And if there's other speakers, you'll just have to kind of coordinate the time between all of you. But welcome.
And Mr. Zigray, you can use this to forward the slide if you care to.
Okay.
Thank you.
On behalf of the Zigray family, we'd like to thank the commissioners and staff for the opportunity to meet in front of you. I never took public speaking and should have, and I apologize, and my family would have been the first to have me have taken it. But
And can you state your first and last name for the record too, please?
yes,
Thank you.
I'm Mark Zigray. My wife and I, Susie, own the property at the address. We are a 3-generation, sometimes 4 generations, living and operating a farm and ranch, full times in the mountains. And as you can expect, half of the ranch is rock and half is trees. So the production on a property like that is not a cash requisition. Our request here today, we're asking for an exemption from the single STR to multiple STRs. It is an 80-acre parcel. That's larger than many subdivisions and some small cities. So we're just asking, we already have approval for the exact same everything going to the property that's approximately 800 feet past this property coming into the lot. As I said, that STR has already been approved with the same thing, and that exists 700 feet apart. I'm sorry, on the 800. It's a unique property, as stated. It's full-time mountain ranch. We run cattle year-round and must feed in the winter. That means multiple trips daily to haul feed in and across the property. Also, we calve between December and February. This parcel has rolling hills and trees. It's a half mile from the closest neighbor, and there is no line of sight between the STRs that exists and the one that we're asking for in our home. As stated by staff, there's no health safety concerns. Parking issues also, as stated, the exact same circumstances of already approved STR. Also, we live on the ranch full time, so response time for an issue would be almost instant. And just a note, there have been none. Economy-wise, the STR would expand visitors to Red Feather Lake small cabins. If you have been to Red Feather Lakes, there are tiny cabins up there. If people want to have family come up and visit with them, they have the option of trying to get a campsite, which, if you don't know, is almost impossible in the summertime. And so they don't have a way to have family come up and visit them. It helps tourism and the business economy. It provides jobs of maintenance, cleaners, and property care. And if you've been up to Red Feather or have property up there, if you want to hire somebody to help you, it's you to do anything, any kind of plumber, electrician, construction worker, it's very expensive. You're paying for 2 hours travel, hour there and an hour back. And that's for a single day job. If it's a multiple day, 2, 3, 5 day deal, the expense of the travel can cost more than the work sometimes. It's very expensive. Business economies, as you know, struggle in Red Feather Lakes. Their empty homes are prone to break-ins, and it's surprising, but only 349 permanent residents live in Red Feather year-round. Why long-term rentals don't work for us, and as an option, there's little to no demand. It's a 2-hour plus travel to go to work and shop. If you've got kids, you're running them to activities. There's, just the time constraints to do that. If you've got teenager kids, there's no jobs up there. So I don't want my grandkids driving down at age 16, driving down to Fort Collins, a few times a week, even once a week. There's almost no economy in the winter. Businesses struggle. Places are not open regular hours. Everything drops, and it's very painful. We have been immersed ourselves into Red Feather community. I'm very proud. I have I'm very proud. I have 3. Sons on the Red Feather Lake Volunteer Fire Department. We believe this is West's best way to continue to be able to continue as a farm and ranch. In closing, and I'll have my son come up, I want to thank you again for your time and consideration. We submitted our application in May of 2023. We were able and told under the guidelines that it would be the guidelines prior to the June 2023. We feel this is very different from the STR in the middle of town or subdivision. We're very remote, and the commissioners have approved a request for an exemption to STR in the past, and we will complete the STR process upon acceptance by the commissioners. Have my son come. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Mark Zigray, son of Mark and Susie. Thank you guys for your time. I really appreciate it. I would like to continue to speak to the uniqueness of this property and the limited impact of this extra STR. Here, Michael Whitley talked about the distance here. The cottage is the property that of interest here, and it's only 2,175 feet to the closest neighbor. That's actually quite a bit far. There's a ton of topography here, hills. That neighbor can't even see this property. They can't hear it. They can't see it. I'm speaking quick because I'm on limited time here, but there's that. Here's what Michael Whitley was talking about. I mapped it out at about 696 feet. The distance. It's a shorter road to access the cottage than the lodge. To speak about that road, the current approved STR is what we call the lodge right there. It has been fully approved. It uses the same access road. That road is flat. It's not a steep, crazy hill. We communicate with our guests. We take pride in communicating with our guests and letting them know, hey, a snowstorm's here. Are you guys capable? Last winter, I don't think we had one crazy snowstorm or anything. But if we do, a lot of times guests can't make it, and we let them know. So communication is something that we do. We have had 0 complaints from guests and neighbors and stuff like that on this road. So the topography here, there's a hill, there's rock outcroppings, there's trees. Again, very capable of people driving there. That's for my brother. I want to reiterate the property of interest, the cottage. It utilizes the access of the approved SDR, which I just said. Guys, we've been at this process for a long time. As everybody have said, allowing this exception of 2 SDRs on a single parcel only conserves county resources and allows both parties to move forward. And the appeals that Michael Whitley mentioned those were some of the reasons why we have an appeal. It decreases the cost going through that process that you guys have presented. This is the feasible route, 80 acres and 2 lots. So unlike small parcels, our 80 acres absorb the impact of a second STR without affecting neighbors. We believe our request is exceptional, and exceptional cases are what appeals are for. I invite my little brother to come up here to end, but thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Casey Zigray. Just wanted to touch on a few things really fast. Part of Michael Whitley's and the Larimer County's team that you guys discussed was holding to the traditions of Red Feather and what that community and the values want. It's a family recreation area. It's a small mountain village. Things like that are very important. But the main goal of Red Feather Lakes in the community is to make a viable community that's safe, healthy, and all these things for residents, businesses, visitors, all those things. By approving this and making this appeal, you're making it more viable for visitors to come up. There's not enough infrastructure today. There's not enough infrastructure for for business to survive in the winter and things like that. So this makes a big change in that regard.
We're out of time. So
can I wrap it up with a couple sentences
a
here?
couple sentences.
Okay. We respectfully request your approval on a second STR on our unique 80-acre lot. With the Spit Gerber precedent that you guys set recently in the Larimer County here, you appealed that it was okay for, in that case, for 2 Airbnbs or short-term rentals to be on a single lot. So I think that's important to note. This request is unique, that it's large, 80 acres. We're surrounded by national forest, and we're off on our own. It's an 80-acre parcel.
Okay.
It balances property rights.
I got to cut you off.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right. So is there anyone from the public who wanted to speak on this? Are you?
Well, he's with the.
Oh, if you're with if you're part of the family, then that.
Yeah, are we going to get to ask?
Oh, he's a separate resident?
No. He's part of the family, but are we going to get to ask questions of the applicant?
Yeah, we can ask questions of the applicant, sure. Did you want to do that first? That's fine.
Yes, I have a.
Okay, so we'll ask the applicant to come back up, and Commissioner Cavales has some questions.
So maybe just to, I think, Casey, the last comment you made, you referenced some kind of appeal that had been approved for something, an Airbnb. Could you clarify that, and we can follow up with staff?
Yeah, I don't have my notes. The case was Spit Gerber. And it was in Larimer County. There's multiple Airbnbs on a single lot that was approved, and it was through the STR process, is what we found.
Okay, thank you. A couple more questions, if I may, Madam Chair. Gosh, all three of you up there. And that is, could you say a little bit more about the relationship with the U.S. Forest Service and the road access? It sounds like the current, and I ask that because it sounds like the way you've described it, the current STR that's been approved, is it made available to folks year round, including winter when there might be snow? But there was some reference to the road is flat, and if you could speak to that relationship with the U.S. Forest Service and that road access and how that works in the wintertime if you're not allowed to maintain it or plow it and that sort of thing.
Yes, sir. The property that we own existed prior to the Forest Service purchasing that property. And so there was access through that there had been cabins in the past on the property. So that has been traversed historically prior to the Forest Service purchasing that. And then what was the other question? I'm sorry.
Well,
as far as through the winter, we use that road daily, multiple times daily. It has never been an issue. We got 50 inches of snow 3 years ago, and we have to run through there with trucks and stuff to get feed for the cows and watch calving and stuff like that. So it is used.
What about guests? I don't mean to interrupt, forgive me, but I'm sure you guys can handle the road pretty well under a variety of conditions. But I'm wondering, it sounds like it's available for short-term rental in the wintertime, and when the conditions are such, there was some reference to, well, we communicate well and we let folks know. Could you be more specific about that? Because I think that would be an issue there that we need to better understand.
Yes.
Can I answer?
Thank you.
Can I speak to that? So last winter, we did not have any large snowstorm. If guests are uncomfortable, we notify them. Well, we notify them of snow. Hey, there's snow up here. We got about 6 inches. 5 feet, nobody's driving, right? So when that happens, nobody's driving. And we communicate that to our guests, and they can't make it up anyway, right? So usually it's just communication on weather. And in most cases, red feather. How much snow do you're experienced up there? We haven't gotten any crazy snow.
But the current
last
STR is available for rental year-round.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, and that is correct. The last thing we'll say is the communication with the guests, and what Mark was hinting at is if there's snow on the ground, we're saying, hey, if you don't have a four-wheel drive vehicle, don't come. We make sure we accommodate and talk with them ahead of time. We don't want anybody being stranded. That's the last thing we want. Never have happened. Never had any concerns. Every review we have is very high, very good flying colors. So it's just making sure if there's snow on the ground, as soon as there is, whether it's an inch, whether it's 5 inches, we talk to them. But us driving on that road flattens it, and there isn't a lot of movement or concern on there. Nobody has ever gotten stuck or anything like that. So
Maybe my last question, please. Thank you. And you may have answered this, but it may have gone over past me. But Michael commented that if there's in the current zoning is open, and in order to have two short-term rentals, they would have to be the zoning would have to change and allow for, I guess it's called resort cottages or resort lodge. But you chose not to pursue that. Can you speak to that again, perhaps?
Yes, sir. So in 2015, we had a farm and ranch down in Weld County, north of Windsor. We sold that property. We contacted the county to find out what the limitations were on this property. We started a special review back in 2019, and we were told by the county we could do stages where we would do this and then get approval, and then we could do this and this. COVID broke out and the county shut down. We couldn't do anything that way. We didn't have very limited communications. People were pulled into inoculating areas and stuff. So then what happened immediately after the COVID, a year and a half of that, then we had a fire, which got within 900 feet of our ranch. That took us, everything piled up, and, you know, both before, during, and after with the kids and stuff, the fire just exhausted us. When we came back to the county, they said, well, if you'd have got to the next step, you've been okay, but no, it's been too long. You need to start over. And our first step that we were working on was to become legal with the county. Okay, that we were just going to get approved for the short-term rentals of the everything, and we were shut down. So, and we were trying to make communications with commissioners. We came to meetings, and we were told that we can't speak to the commissioners because they're going to be in front of us at a hearing at some point, so we weren't able to talk. So I hope that answers your question, but we were, during that time too, while COVID, the county went and changed the zoning, so all of a sudden we've got to change the zone of our farm, go through all that. We don't have the deep pockets to do that stuff. Surveys, change of zone, everything, but that was all approved we had no notice of anything. Hey, you guys have a special review in process. Do you have any input or anything? We found out after COVID that those changes have been made, and so yeah, financially that just wasn't and isn't something that we could do. So it was not an option. We just wanted a simple short-term short-term rental on our property. So
Thank you, sir.
Commissioner, anything else?
That's all.
All right, Commissioner Shadegg, any questions for the applicants? Okay, we'll have you sit down.
Can I add just one?
No, actually, we can't do that. I'm sorry. Okay. So we will move on to public comment, and it looked like we had one public commenter, but are you part of the family? Or is it like, so, and is this family owned?
Well, he owns a different lot, lives at a different spot.
So what I would say is public comment is not intended to extend the applicant's presentation. It's intended for the public to raise comments or concerns. So to the extent that the individual fits that description, which is up to the individual to decide, it would be their decision.
Okay, so knowing that, if you feel like you meet that criteria, you're welcome to speak for 3 minutes.
Yeah, this is not meant to extend the applicant's presentation. It's intended for the public to raise comments or concerns.
Okay. So if I just speak to the standards of the appeal, that's separate?
I mean, it is up to you to determine that. So, I mean, if you feel like it's something different, it's not extending what's already been said, you're welcome to come up and share.
Okay.
And I'll just jump in really quick. My name is Christine Luckison. I'm one of the county attorneys. When we say it's not meant to extend the application, we mean like we want to make sure that the public comment is used for the public to have comment, not to add additional time onto that application, like advocating why the application meets the criteria as part of an extension of the application. It's hard to explain, but if you feel that you meet the criteria and you want to give public comment, it is totally up to you. I just want to be clear about what it is intended for.
Everything's into interpretation, so I feel like that's
And it's totally up to you. And if you'd like to speak, you'll have 3 minutes.
Can I start? And if you feel it's too...
We'll just let you go.
Yeah,
Why
go
don't
ahead.
You
We
just
won't
come
cut
up?
you off. Yeah.
All right. I'm Ryan Zigray. Thank you for your time, and appreciate everything, and let me talk. So I want to talk about the appeal. It's judged on the 5 standards that you guys went over, and I feel like when we were talking and coming and communicating with all the requirements, The first one was to not subvert the standard. And so I feel like when we were talking about it, you got to kind of put a capsule on everything and go, okay, we're going to be talking mostly about residential lots, 5-acre lots, stuff that's a lot smaller. You can't cover everything. So I feel like the standard was set for the smaller lots, and then it's a case by case as things get bigger. The other thing that makes a difference is there's 2 principal addresses. So it's not an accessory dwelling, it's these were existing prior to the property. And an 80-acre lot is larger than most lots in the county. The big thing that sets things apart between doing the short-term rental and the resort would be the resort is for a major recreational activity. We're not looking to have some major recreational activity. We're providing a place for someone to stay and enjoy the forest. And so we technically can fall into 2 different categories, but the resort lodge is a longer process and a more costly one with changing the rezoning. And then it's a special review, not a administrative review. And this is just looking to approve a single family home. The health and safety values for the next standard, I agree with the county staff. It complies with everything. It probably makes it safer having someone always there and deters theft and random people coming in and camping out. The minimum action necessary for the third requirement, again, is if we do something 31 days or longer, there's a surplus, there's no demand, people can't sell their homes, they aren't renting them for the long time periods that they'd like. And the reason for that is there's no work in the area. And so if we were to go the other way, it's just a longer process to do the resort lodge. And the following item, number 4, there'd be no cost to the public, so I agree with staff on that. And then consistent with the purpose of the code, this is what the code is for, to have these appeals for those special, odd, rare properties where you have a unique circumstance that is a large acre and not what you'd have in town and throughout most of the place. So,
Thank you.
thanks.
Is there anyone else in the public who want to give public comment? Ryan, can we ask if there's anyone online who wants to give public comment?
So we do have one person with their hand raised.
Okay.
Hannah Stone, you may unmute yourself and you have 3 minutes, please.
All right. Good afternoon, commissioners. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, great. Our property abuts up to a parcel that Phantom Lake Ranch and the Zigray family own. It's not this particular parcel, but we are close neighbors. And I can speak to the character of the Zigray family. They are the most respectful, responsible, and caring individuals, and they nurture and care for their land and all that is on it. And my husband and I feel that is very generous of the family to share their beautiful 80 acres of this ranch property by letting people stay in their cottage. I know the Zigrays will vet their guests very well. And just to close, my husband Roger and I are totally in support of the Zigray family and their request for the cottage and the permit for the short-term rental. You're welcome.
Is there anyone else, Ryan, online?
If there are any other members of the public online who would like to speak on this case, please use the raise your hand function now. We have no hands raised.
Then we will close public comment, bring it back to the commissioners. We won't have you, Zigray family, do rebuttal because there was no one who spoke against against this. So bring it back to commissioners to see if there's any further questions before. Go ahead, Commissioner Kavalis.
Thank you. Michael, a couple of questions. One is, can you provide information about what was stated during the applicant's testimony regarding an appeal for having, more than one STR on a parcel on a property that had been approved in the past?
I am not Michael, but I'm going to step in and I
yes,
would
you are not Michael.
be more than happy to answer that question. So back on July 28th, there's a case before you that had two separate appeals. It's up in the Estes Valley. It is zoned EVA1, and the property was located on 121 Griffith Court in Estes Park. They had two appeal requests. The first was to have multiple short-term rentals on a property, and the second was to vary from the Larimer County Rural Area roadway standards for a section of road. You approved the first appeal, which was to have multiple short-term rentals on a single property, but you denied the second request, which was an appeal to the roadway standard. I believe there was a large evergreen tree that was too close to the roadway in that section. And I just want to point out that this is an Estes Valley Accommodations Zone District, and so I believe that was part of staff's rationale in the staff report supporting that appeal.
Thank you. And
does that answer your question, or is there any additional details?
No, gosh, Jenny, thank you. That's what I was wanting to know. And I think my only...
I guess, let me add one more thing, and otherwise I think Christine would jump in, and just because that appeal was approved, it does not set any precedent for you all to approve any subsequent appeals.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just one other question. I think, Michael, you can of course you can answer this, and that is when we updated the short-term rental regulations and we put in a 500-foot separator between STRs, and there was a reference to the distance would be either 630 feet or perhaps more. Isn't it correct that in Red Feather Lakes that separator is different?
Yes, in Red Feather Lakes, that separation is 125 feet, I believe.
25.
It was reduced.
I believe that was reduced upon your request, Commissioner Koufalis.
I believe you're correct.
I think that also, though, does assume that those short-term rentals are on separate parcels, given the restriction that only one is allowed per parcel.
All right. Any other questions? Any questions of staff?
I do not. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Madam Chair.
We'll move into deliberation. Commissioner Shattuck McNally will let you get started.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thanks for the Zigray family from coming all the way down as a family. I really appreciate you coming together, and it's lovely to see how well you support each other and have such a unique operation up in Red Feather. Thank you for staff for the thoroughness of your presentation and all the work that you've done on this. I reviewed this and looked at this at length and thought about the criteria and what we had and why we had those and the long-term use of that. And I went back to the criteria, which is what I'm using, and also knowing that there is some other things to consider. I do have concerns, though, with item 2, and we have a little more discretion because this is under the old applications. I do have concerns about wildfire safety and environment and wildlife. Also, I do have really big concerns about the U.S. Forest Service notes and their conversation with you about not plowing and other items about that road, and it would not meet current standards. Even though we can't consider that, I still think that is something to consider. And so the limited ability to control the road condition is really a concern of mine. I do think that this does not not comply with section 6.7.2b5, and it does not meet item A because it does subvert the purpose of the standard or the requirement. And also the approval of the appeal is the minimum action necessary. It says does not also apply to that. So those two items, along with my concerns about wildlife and the condition of the roads, I cannot support this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I think we have to base our decision on the criteria, and I'm also understanding that we as commissioners have the ability to interpret and to really be clear on what is the intent of the criteria. And I think this particular application, it hinges a lot on the the short-term rental criterion A, having to do with only one short-term rental shall be allowed on a property. And in my mind, I get that. I also think that this is a very unique application, and that particular criterion applies to. I don't think we took into consideration an 80-acre parcel. There's already an existing structure. I believe that the issue with the U.S. Forest Service and one of the other criteria that was mentioned, request partially complies with this criteria. And I think that there was adequate testimony in my mind that addressed the concerns about road access and the condition of the road in the winter. So I guess in the end, I'm going to support this application because the way I see the appeal is for that particular criterion, and I believe that this is a very unique situation, and I think the separator, as you indicated, Michael, thank you. I thought in my head it was 200 feet, but I guess you would know best, 100. But it's neither here nor there. But the important thing is that the understanding was that it was on separate parcels and all that. So, all that said, because I am looking at the most relevant criterion here, and this is an appeal of that, and this is a very unique situation, I will support this appeal.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you to the family who came out today. I will not be supporting this appeal. I will be taking staff's recommendation. I do understand that there are some things that make this a little bit different, and I don't think we did contemplate 80-acre properties. But I do have some concerns about particularly review criteria 2. Adverse impacts have adequately been addressed. I don't think because of the road and the not being able to control that road, that certainly the request only partially complies with this criterion. And then only one short-term rental shall be allowed on a property. Maybe we had, at one point thought, we just didn't want them to be very close together, but it's pretty specifically laid out in section 3.3.5.b.2 that is, that's how that's stated. I mean, I do think that there is a route for the family to go, and I know it could be a little more expensive. Making this a resort lodge or resort cottages would be an option to make this work. But they aren't allowed right now in the open zone district, and I just feel like we're trying to bend the code a little bit too much here, subverting the code a little bit too much. So I will not be supporting the application. I do understand that there are some unique circumstances here, but I don't think that I still think that approving would be a subversion of the code, and so I have to go with the code and staff's recommendation. So I will ask Commissioner Shattuck McNally to make the motion on this.
Certainly, Madam Chair. I move that the Board of County Commissioners deny the Zigray 684 Phantom Ranch Road short-term rental administrative special review and appeal, file number 23-CONE 3509.
Thank you. There's a motion on the table. Any further discussion on this? Please go ahead, Commissioner Kafalas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just, maybe for future consideration, the next time we look at our short-term rental regulations, maybe we could consider unique situations and the size of the property and whether that merits further discussion on changing that aspect of it or putting in some kind of consideration for the size of the property. So that's all I would ask, that we consider that next time we review the regs.
Thank you, Commissioner.
And Madam Chair, I'd just like to make sure that when we consider that, we have to really take into consideration the high wildfire risk in certain areas and some of the troubles and challenges we have with that currently. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. All right, duly noted. There is a motion on the table. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed say nay.
Nay.
All right, that motion passes 2-1. That is the only other business to come before us this afternoon. So at 5:10, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.